This is the Conscious Economics Podcast. Your co-hosts are two women who found themselves in careers on Bay Street, but decided that there was something missing. So here we are. I'm Rhiannon Roseland. I'm your co-host and the CEO of the Economic Club of Canada. I'm also the co-founder of Conscious Economics.
Hi, I'm Asil, the CEO of Conscious Economics and a financial therapist.
Now, we call ourselves economic healers, and that is a term that I'm sure nobody has heard before, but we really believe that if we want to heal our systems and create a more equitable society, it starts with actually healing our relationship with money and the economy.
When you join us on this podcast, you'll be exposed to courageous conversations that help us examine, heal, and redefine the relationship we have with money. Join us on this journey as we co-create the new economy together.
Hi everyone, this is Rhiannon here, and you are tuning in once again to the Conscious Economics Podcast.
And this is your co-host Asil, and as usual, we have a very exciting topic to explore with you today, which is honestly one of our frameworks, and it's really explaining to you why the rainbow symbol is our profit symbol, which is something that...
So just to kind of fill everyone in, Conscious Economics is an organization that we run. Yeah. And we have a philosophy really. It's the people, planet, profit, art philosophy around the conscious economy. So those are the four pillars that really, really anchor in what we call the conscious economy. And our creative, incredible design team had put symbols to each of those people, planet, profit, art. And when we were trying to figure out what would be the symbol that we would use for the profit, of course, the regular like dollar signs and a bag of money. And we were like, no. This is the conscious economy, and we really want to teach everyone that there are more currencies than just money. When we talk about profit, when we talk about wealth, there's more to it than just money, and this is kind of the whole nature of what we do. And so we decided to choose the rainbow as the symbol for a couple of reasons. One, because if you think about a rainbow symbolically, to me, I think about that pot of gold at the end of it. I think about sort of dreams being fulfilled and coming true, like the sublime beauty of what that gift is of nature is a source of wealth. And I also think about the fact that there are 7 colors that are in the rainbow. And for us, there are 7 currencies that we believe are a part of the conscious economy. So today we're going to tell you what those 7 currencies are that make up that beautiful profit rainbow symbol, and invite you into this world.
So like we said, there's 4 pillars that really create the conscious economics movement. The first is people. So under people, there's 4 different currencies that we can explore, and that is health and well-being, relationships, time, and education. So let's explore each of those separately. So let's start with health and well-being. And Rhea, I'm going to pass that on to you because I know you're very passionate about this specific one.
Well, this is so fundamental to everything in our society, in our world. And if we really think about what's going on right now in the midst of still a global pandemic, we realize how important health is. Because look, when we don't have health, we can have our entire economy be shut down. And, outside of just even the COVID-19 pandemic, if we really think about the mental health and the well-being of our labor force right now, this is why health and well-being is probably the most primary currency that we want to focus on when we talk about the conscious economy. And it's not just about your own personal health. Of course, that is essential, but it's also that if you have skills that you could lend to others to help them develop better well-being and health, that is a currency in the new economy. And it's a currency that we possess here. So you'll see that even in our programs like Mindfulness and Money, we're trying to give you and teach you well-being skills so that you can actually cultivate that currency in your own life. So if you have skills, then you want to share them with others and do that exchange. And you also want to focus on how you can build that resiliency, that health and well-being within yourself. Because if you can't function, if you can't move, you can't work and you can't enjoy some of these other currencies that are associated with it. So it's super, super important.
Of course, and it's a foundation. That's why we started with it. And the second one is relationships. And another way of looking at relationships would be considering it your social capital. We had a great facilitator in our Mindfulness and Money session, Johnny, and he was talking about seeing even your relationships as assets and liabilities, assessing what kind of relationships you have in your life that contribute to your life, to contribute to your growth and support that growth trajectory you're on, and which relationships really take away from that. And when you start evaluating your relationships as a form of asset and liability, you can easily see the gaps or the type of changes you need to do to make sure that you're really spending quality time with those that really matter. And another way of looking at relationships, so there's different forms of support and value each person offers you. But from a social capital perspective, you are, like, there's a quote, I forgot who said it, but it's, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend your time around.
And it's so true. It's so true. And I remember when I was 15, I've talked a little bit about my childhood, obviously, on the podcast. But when I was 15, I had this massive wake up call because I was on a very, very rough trajectory. And I was, dabbling with drugs and alcohol. And I was, kicked out of school and all of these things. And really, if I look at who was around me during that time, all of the key relationships were reflecting back that same spot that I was in.
Yes.
And so it became kind of normalized to be out of school, to be, using drugs at 15, to be doing all this, because everyone that I surrounded myself was doing the same. So I love that idea that Ajani threw out about really thinking about it as, your relationships are sort of looked at as assets and liabilities, because we all can relate to this, relationships that just drain us. They take from us. They leave us feeling more empty than they do fulfilled. And it's hard to cut those relationships out, but it's an important thing to do sometimes.
Yeah, it is hard because a lot of the times we also identify ourselves with who we're surrounded by ourselves with. So sometimes cutting these relationships also creates an identity shift, which is really the tough part. Change comes with ripple effects into our life. And when our identity itself is being questioned because of these changes, that's when it becomes really that much harder to implement. So because it's not just an external factor, it really brings back that question of who I am outside these relationships. Who am I outside this
100%.
Career path, etc. So this is another currency that we really encourage you to think about, to leverage, to invest in. And any of these 7 currencies we're exploring, you can invest in all of them. And that's really why they're currencies to begin with. Currencies, another way of looking at it, is things you can exchange to get value from other currencies. So you can always exchange your relationship to gain specific things, and having that mutual growth relationship makes it a sustainable long-term.
100%. And I think of your primary relationship. So if you have a partner in your life, think about how that's so fundamental to building the foundation of your life. And also in business, we think about relationships. So how do my business relationships and my business network help me when I'm launching a new product, when I'm, trying to go out and, see if I can raise capital for something that we're doing? Those relationships are incredibly, incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Actually, one more thing before we move on to time. When I recently also, I'm bringing a lot of facilitators into this topic, but really we have a beautiful community of people we rely on, and that goes to show you how also we are very community focused and community based. And another facilitator I was going to mention is Sheena, and I absolutely love Sheena. And when I had a one-on-one session with her recently, she's our mindfulness coach as well. Sheena was coaching me on some of the assets that she thinks I have, or some of the strengths that she thinks I can leverage on to create abundance in my life. And she told me relationships is where I'm at.
Yes.
Relationships for me is one of my biggest assets, my biggest resource, really.
Yeah.
So that's why when I have certain things to evaluate, like, should I do this or should I do that? Essentially, that helps me leverage on the skill sets and the assets in my own life. So
I love that.
It's going to be different for different people, but relationships is pretty high up for me.
Hold that thought. We have a quick word from our partners before going back to the episode. This podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, RBC Investies. Backed by expert human advisors, RBC Investies is a smart, online, automated investment service that allows you to invest with low effort and low cost.
Open your first RBC Investies account and pay no management fees for your first year. Plus, start investing with as little as $100. Simply visit rbcinvesties.com/getinvesting and sign up using promo code AA407.
And now back to the episode.
So the next one is time. Tell us about time.
Oh my goodness. Well, time is money.
That's a very
time is such an important resource. And again, you know, a lot of the times we may be spending our precious resource of time, maybe not in such a productive way. You know, I constantly feel this, and I think so many people can relate, especially in today's day and age when everything's coming at us so fast. You know, we are running sort of multiple organizations over here, and, you know, I'm a mom, we're trying to cultivate relationships, and time becomes very precious. So being able to really see time as one of your most precious resources and currencies of your life, I think is really important. And if we look at the same as we would budget our money, if we look and really look at where we're budgeting our time, we can see where our values are really at. Because although I could say that health is an important part of my life, if I'm not actually budgeting time towards that, it may mean otherwise. So being able to actually do a time budget where you can really look and reflect of where you're spending your time, where you're putting your time, and if they align with your values is a really, really important part of the conscious economy and thinking about wealth and well-being and currency in this different, more progressive way.
Absolutely. And the next one would be education. And that one goes without saying, but the things I want to really emphasize here is as we expand into the digital world even more, the concept of education is drastically changing. It's no longer just going to a university and putting a degree on your wall. There's very different, different ways to learn in today's world.
Yes.
Like a lot of different topics are available to you at a fingertips.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah. Yes.
So essentially, when you value education, you can expand your skill sets, you can expand your intellectual property and abilities to formulate new and added value to society. And anytime you're in a position where you add value to someone or solve a problem that's existing, which essentially is a result of the education you go through, then you're able to cultivate opportunities that flow money into your life. 100%. So again, I want to really invite you to think again about all these different currencies, because you already have much more than just what's in your bank account. All these different elements we're exploring right now are things you can exchange to increase what's in your bank account, and therefore is what makes them a currency.
100%. And when I reflect, we just a few weeks ago ran a retreat for artists through Conscious Economics, and one of our incredible coaches and another one of our wellness coaches that's part of the Conscious Economics family, Gary, he actually did an activity where we had to each teach each other a skill. And so again, kind of showing how, you know, when you're educated or when you have a particular skill that you have cultivated, now you have that currency that you can actually teach that skill. So you can actually help somebody else and pass that resource along. And that is part of that whole exchange within the economy. So it's really, really, I think, an important one. But I love what you're saying, that it's changing, because it is. And one thing that I will always say to everyone that's listening, the traditional notion of the degree, and of course all of these things are important, but never underestimate the life education that you have from growing up and going through different circumstances and challenges and overcoming them. Sometimes that's the best education. I really don't think that I would be, you know, a CEO for this long and doing all of this work without going through a hard knock life and actually learning things from street smarts. and being able to apply that in the way that I cultivate relationships and do business. So it's really, really important that you understand that education can come in many forms, and it's such an important currency.
Absolutely. And this one, the next one we're going to explore is planet. And hold your breath here for a second, because we're going to explain what that means. And this was really an aha moment for me when Rhiannon and I were writing out what our 7 currencies are. Rhiannon really offered me this insight, and a part of me was like, how is that a resource? Because all the other ones we're exploring, health, relationships, time, education, these are things we really work for, versus the planet is something that's already existing out there. And it was like an aha moment for me. It's like, wow, my abundance vibration just instantly expanded by realizing there's already so much resources around us that we take super for granted, and yet they are available, and they are resources that is available to all of us. So tell me more about your thinking around that, because honestly, this was one of the breakthrough moments I've had with you.
Well, I think that our planet and our environment is one of our most precious currencies, and one, like you said, that we've been taking for granted. But if we don't have a healthy planet, how can we keep going? And we're watching the impact and the result of the damage we've done to the planet. So when you think about planet, that's everything from our food production to our water, to our energy resources. So all of that is encompassed in the currency of planet. And again, when we think about, we obviously take from the planet, we take from the resources, but do we give back? Do we invest back into that currency? And I think that that's an important thing for future generations, and for the conscious, economy movement, that we start really thinking about how we're investing back into the planet. Whether it is as small as planting a small, garden in your backyard or on your windowsill. It's that idea of actually putting your hands in the soil and giving back to something. It gives you so much, and it's such an important, it's just an important value. And if we look back to Indigenous cultures, it's one of their most precious and important currencies, was understanding the planet, giving back to the planet, cultivating the planet, and this is something that I think we really have to bring back into the modern society.
A quick story to share with you on that one is when I took my trauma of money certification, one of the instructors there was, I can't remember his name, Emmanuel, but I forgot his last name. Brilliant speaker, brilliant story. He was unfortunately one of those child soldiers in Africa. And he was talking about the experience he went when him and a bunch of people his age were trying to move from one place to the other, and they were experiencing a lot of food scarcity at the time. And one of the things he started doing is exploring the plants that were just available in nature. And because of the immense need for food, like when a person is starving, it's one of the biggest painful experiences you can go through in life, according to him, especially when you're dehydrated and you're exhausted and there's nothing around you, you can't function.
Yeah.
So essentially that forces you to be really creative and in an attunement to what's really around you. So he started realizing one day after the other, as the journey expanded, how many edible things are truly surrounding him, from the plants to the living, animals and all these pieces that he would have never, few days ago, he would have never explored consuming, but because of the desperate need he was in, by the time the journey continued, now he was aware of all these things around him. And he said abundance was around me all along. I just wasn't in that framework to see it or to perceive it as such.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment of desperation that it opened his mind to all the abundance that truly surrounds us.
It's also, if we, and that's such an interesting story and example. Thank you for sharing it. I also think about the current trends that I'm seeing in business on Bay Street, from investors, and planet is now becoming a very important currency for businesses. We talk about the idea of ESG, which we explore in Mindfulness and Money, which is environmental, social, and governance cues that now investors are looking for. So they want to see how a company is performing on environmental sustainability. It truly is a currency now within the economy, that it's a measurement pole that people are looking at when they're trying to decide if they even want to invest in an organization or work there or vice versa. So it's so interesting. I mean, there's so many ways that we could break
so many
that
layers
down. Yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
The sixth currency, are you ready for it?
We are.
Money.
Money. Yeah, it's still there. We still have to worry about
and
it.
Of course it has to be. And this is the whole conscious economics movement, is not going away from embracing money into our life, but really changing the meaning we project onto it so that it can really become a representation and a value add, so that we really appreciate it and learn how to grow it in a way that's in alignment with who we are.
100%. And money is obviously very self-explanatory. It's the currency that we most associate with, and that's why we want to ensure that everyone that's listening now know that money isn't the only currency that we talk about at Conscious Economics. It's one of, because there is so much wrapped up in money, as we know, and so many, positive and negative feelings associated with it, but it really is at the center of our economies. It's at the center of the function of our societies. And so it's something that we can't ignore, that we need to embrace, and we need to develop a healthier relationship with. So it's an important one.
This may be a cheesy exercise, but I just thought about it because I remember, when I was taking on private clients, sometimes I was telling you this earlier, if somebody was going through a financial phase that they couldn't really pay for my services, I would challenge them to come up with a different energy exchange or value add that we can make this relationship feasible. Because obviously I honor every person who offers services, and I always coach clients never to just, a lot of artists fall in that, where they just do art work for free. So it's very important to create an energy exchange of some sort, especially to make sure that you're growing your services and being sustainable. But what I would offer instead is not necessarily, especially when somebody is starting their business, it's very common that people say, I'm just going to offer it for free, or I'm just going to do X amount of free things so that I can put my name out there. But really starting to invite clients to think about an energy exchange in exploring other currencies. So maybe I cannot pay you X amount for your services, but I have this skill that I know you need that I can offer you, or I have this specific relationship that I can introduce you to that would be very helpful for your business, or et cetera, et cetera. So I know actually my DJ in my upcoming wedding, actually by the time this episode is aired, it could be, I could have had my wedding already. It's 10/10. So my DJ is my own client, actually. He was my client from last year, and he called me because he wanted to purchase additional coaching services. And I said, hey, I'm actually looking for a DJ for my wedding. You know what? Let's just do this barter exchange.
There she goes. She's participating in the conscious economy.
Yeah. So he's DJing my wedding, so cool. And in return, I'm giving him coaching sessions.
That's awesome. And I love opening up that barter economy and just making that normal and something that we start to think about, because again, there's so many reasons why that's so positive and why it's giving such positive energy exchange across the board and helping people as entrepreneurs get, there, because now, I'll be at the wedding, and if I really like that DJ, I may want him to do something for me too. Let's finish off with the last currency. This is another really fundamental one for us.
Yes. Art is a huge pillar, but there's so many things that fall under that category, and that's really creativity, innovation, talent, all these things that we really in the new economy we want to bring back up there and integrate it with every way we show up.
And so many, again, when you think about creativity as a currency, your creative life force as a currency, and how so many of us are in a deficit where we don't have the time or the energy or the well-being to be able to feel creative. And so cultivating that creativity and being able to use that creativity is so essential to the new economy. And it is something that requires there's space. Creativity is not something that you can force. Creativity is something that is expressed when we are living in alignment and balance. And obviously there's artists that rely on their creative life force in order to do their work. And they'll be the first to tell you that it takes investment in order to ensure that your creativity is well, that your creativity is flowing. And again, for those of you that may not see yourself as an artist, I will tell you that every human being is a creator and a creative. And whether it's the way that we create through our infrastructure of the way we design a business, to the way that we write a book, to the way that we, creatively look at, legal infrastructure. Like there is creativity and art in everything. And it is such a fundamental part of the pillar, which finishes off our rainbow.
Yes.
So that is the explanation of why that rainbow is there when you see our profit pillar.
I want to leave you with this exercise that I was alluding to earlier and I got off track. So what I would really invite you to do when you hear this episode is really make an inventory for your own life and evaluate all these currencies. Which ones are you high on? Which ones are you potentially needing to invest in? And really wake up and start looking at all of them simultaneously instead of just looking into what's in your bank account, especially if you're having financial issues at this point, so that once you tune into the other resources and currencies available to you, you're becoming more abundant and naturally the money will flow as a result. So just start this mindset, and we'll talk a lot more about this and offer more tips on our social media and economic healing sessions and memberships. So feel free to always visit our Conscious Economics website, consciouseconomics.ca, and you'll find these resources there for you.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by CPP Investments. At CPP Investments, they never lose sight of the long term. They invest the Canadian Pension Plan Fund to help provide financial security for generations of Canadians.
They diversify the CPP fund across geographies and asset classes to access the best investment opportunities and generate sustainable long-term returns. The fund is now more than $400 billion.
To learn more about their investment performance for Canadians, visit cppinvestments.com.